how to deploy highly available application like e-business suite and database with disaster recovery in Oracle's Gen 2 cloud, that's OCI. How region, availability domain and fault domain plays an important role in deploying application or database in OCI. I'll cover all this and more in this episode. Welcome to this final part 5 of 5-part video series Networking in Oracle's Gen 2 Cloud with me Atul Kumar from team K20 Academy. So let's first begin with a question I asked in the previous video. And this question is from our Cloud Architect Certification Training 1Z0932. And if you're appearing for this Cloud Architect certification, expect questions like these. The question was, when deploying a highly available internet facing, so make a note of these words, highly available or internet facing 2-tier web application on OCI, which design options would you choose? And options you have is option 1, deploy all web servers into one availability domain and behind public load balancer, and deploy 2 single OCI databases and deploy 2 single node OCI database system in same availability domain with data guard enabled. So in answers, focus on things like 1 availability domain, public load balancer, 2 single database nodes. So similarly, option 2 is deploy all web servers into multiple availability domain and behind a public load balancer, and deploy 2 single node OCI database system across 2 availability domain with data guard enabled. Now make a note of things like 2 availability domain here, or multiple availability domain, or behind a public load balancer. Then option 3 is deploy all web servers into multiple availability domain behind a private load balancer, and deploy 2 single node OCI database system across 2 availability domain with data guard enabled. Or deploy all web servers into 1 availability domain and deploy a single node OCI database system into a different availability domain. So just guess what might be the answer. It doesn't need to be correct. So put your answer in the comment section and then watch this video till end, and then comment again to see if your original answer that you gave at the start right now, do you still think that's correct, or do you want to change your answer based on what you're going to learn in this video? Trust me, it will be fun to leave a comment. I myself got this answer wrong first time, so it's okay to put the answer whatever you think right now. Just pick your best guess and leave a comment. So with this little fun exercise done, let me begin with 3 deployment topology that we presented to one of our big e-business suite customer. And here e-business suite is just an example. You can use the same approach to deploy any 3-tier application, be it PeopleSoft, JD Edward, or a custom Java application with database. So option 1, you have everything in single domain inside a single region. Now this type of deployment is suitable for test and dev environment or non-critical applications where business can afford a little bit time to wait in case if application goes down, or underlying infrastructure like servers, storage, network, or databases are not available. Now another reason why you or your customer would like to pick this option is because you are in a region and that region only support 1 availability domain. Like for Canada, as of 2019, there is only 1 availability domain in a region. So you are in a country that has only 1 availability domain, and the regulations or data compliance enforce you that you can only be in that specific region with this availability domain. Then only option you have is with this kind of approach. Now, what is availability domain? What is region? And third hidden concept like fault domain. I'm going to cover these concepts shortly. Now, option 2 you have is you have multiple availability domain, but all these availability domain are inside a single region. Now, this is one of the most common deployment we see across cloud customers, and this option gives you both high availability and disaster recovery, but within a region. Then you have third option, which is multiple availability domain with multiple region. Now this option is for mission critical large deployment that provides disaster recovery solution across region. This is taking your previous approach or option 2 onto the next level by replicating the data across region. Now, if you see, the common thing across these all three options are that they talk about region, availability domain, and third hidden thing that you don't see here is fault domain. So let's first understand what these are and limitations of OCI resources like your compute, storage, network, within network VCN or subnet in the context of region and availability domain. So let's begin with a region. Region is nothing but a geographical location hosting a Oracle's cloud data center. Now, as of February 2019, there are 5 data centers, 2 in US, 1 in Germany, 1 in UK, London, and 1 in Canada. So this diagram represents the red squares. These are commercial data centers in that specific region that are currently live. The blue ones are government one. The red circles are the planned commercial. So they're more planned for Mumbai, Tokyo, Saudi Arabia, and in Australia too. And then square with a blue outline and white inside, these are planned government OCI data centers. So there's a lot more coming in 2019. So assume a region as a data center where your data reside. Now within a region, you can have up to 3 availability domain. So let's look at what is availability domain. So within a region, you can have up to 3 data centers, and these 3 data centers are interconnected with high bandwidth, low latency pipe that provides high availability across applications deployed within these availability domains. So your servers will be residing in one of the availability domain, and then you can have these servers in another availability domain as well. Now these services in OCI like your databases, network, and within network your VCN or subnet or storage and different type of storage. Some of these are scoped within availability domain and some are scoped within a region. We'll see that in a minute. So you have availability domain which are 3 data centers within a region. Then you have fault domain. So fault domain are within a availability domain. You have 3 fault domain, which is logical grouping of hardware and infrastructure within that availability domain. So when Oracle has to do some maintenance, they will take one fault domain at a time down. And again, this plays a very important role for you to understand when you're deploying highly available application. And I'm going to explain this, how this plays an important role when I'm discussing option 1, which is deploying application within single availability domain. So when you're deploying a compute, which is when you're creating a machine to deploy the application, you can optionally select in which fault domain they are going. And then comes your resource scope. Now in OCI, resources are nothing but your individual services like your compute or Linux or Windows machines. Or you can have databases or your network like your virtual cloud network or subnet or load balancers or storage and different type of storage like block storage, object storage, file storage or bucket. So these resources are scoped, which means they reside within that particular part, and that location could be, as I said, as you see here, global, or it could be regional, or it could be specific to availability domain. So if we take an example, compute or the Linux machine that we create, we call compute or instance, that is scoped within availability domain, which means it can only live within availability domain. And then if you want high availability across availability domains, then you need to deploy another machine for high availability. So the scope plays a very important role. Now, if you look at all these, everything is scoped either to a availability domain or a region, with the exception of identity and access management, that's global. So identity and access management is a topic for in itself for some other time. But what you notice here is that subnet is scoped to availability domain or region, and that's something changed very recently. So I covered about this VCN and subnet in part 3 of this video series. So if you have not watched it, go to URL k29academy.com/1z093215 or 15. So subnets till recently used to be scoped to a point availability domain, but now you can also create subnet that are scoped to regional, which means you can create a subnet and say scope as region, and then you can go and create a machine or Linux machine that will deploy within a subnet across any availability domain. Now, if you would like to know more about it, leave a comment to me, and then I might do another video depending on how many requests I get about this. Subnet can now be either regional or availability domain and how it impacts your deployment in OCI. So just to do a recap, because we are going to use these things in our high availability deployment options. So you have region, which is nothing but a geographical location hosting one or more Oracle's cloud data centers. There are a lot of new OCI regions planned in 2019. Then you have availability domain, which is up to 3 data centers within a region. Then fault domain, which is 3 fault domains within one single availability domain. And then these resources are scoped either to a global, regional, or specific to availability domain. So now let's look at option 1 of cloud deployment model that we discussed earlier. That is everything in single availability domain within a region. So this is the diagram I mentioned earlier. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a virtual cloud network, VCN, and within that VCN, you're going to deploy all the 3 tiers. That's database tier, application tier, and potentially a web tier or the load balancer tier. Now I've covered this virtual cloud network or subnets in one of the previous videos in this series. So if you have not watched, go back to k29academy.com/1z093215 or 15 and go and look at this virtual cloud network or subnet. Then you may also would like to know load balancer, and for load balancer, go to k29academy.com/1z093216. So you can deploy these database tier, application tier within a single availability domain. Now, if you want a high availability or disaster recovery solution within an availability domain, then you have an option of fault domain or deploying a rack database. So when you're deploying this database or creating the Linux machine or Windows machine for the application tier, you create more than one, but within different fault domain. So let me show you in OCI, when you're deploying Linux machine, at what point you select this fault domain. So I'm in a OCI console, you go to this compute here, click on instances, click on create instance. You provide all these details related to your instance. Now here, because I'm in a Frankfurt region, my account, and hence I see these 3 availability domain. But if you are in a data center that only has 1 availability domain, then you would see single availability domain. But scroll down, you select provide all the details. And at the bottom under show advanced options, this is where you will see under which fault domain. So you see, you select a drop down and select the fault domain. Now, important thing to note here is if you have single database node, single application tier, make sure they both are selected to be on same fault domain. Why? Because if you put them into separate fault domain, then if your database tier fault domain goes down, your application is not available. Similarly, if your application tier specific fault domain goes down, your application will not be available. So you're going to lose your availability in case whether either fault domain 1 goes down or fault domain 2 goes down. So a tip here, if you have single node database tier or single node application tier, make sure they both are on same fault domain so that you have availability in a scenario where second fault domain goes down but your first is available. So at least have 50% more chances of your availability. Now let's look at how do you deploy high availability for database tier or application tier when you have single availability domain. So for Oracle database, you have an option of data guard or real application cluster. Now, I'm not going to cover this in about data guard or rack, but we have a comprehensive Oracle DBA to Cloud DBA training program. In that training program, we cover extensively about these data guard and rack on how to deploy them in OCI or how to provision them into OCI as well. So if you want to go in deep into these data guard and rack, so I'll highly recommend you to have a look at that training program. So data guard is nothing but you have a database, one database acting as a primary and secondary database acting as a standby. Now in this example here, this is shown in two availability domain, and that's the option you have when you do it via OCI or Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. But you can use the normal data guard or standard data guard. If you're a DBA, you're familiar with that. If not, you ask your DBAs to deploy your databases primary and standby the way you do in on-premise. You can do the same way within different fault domains. So you'll create your primary database in one fault domain. You're going to create your standby database on second fault domain. Or you can have a rack, that's real application cluster database, which is represented here. So you have two node rack database for high availability within same availability domain. Oracle automatically is going to put them into different fault domain. So you have two options for high availability within single availability domain. One, you have a rack, which Oracle Cloud Infrastructure tool will take care of, or you have the data guard, which if it's within one single availability domain, then you have to do it manually using and selecting the different fault domain. Or if you have two availability domains, then Oracle will take care of this data guard setup for you from an OCI point of view. So that's high availability for database. For application tier, you're going to create two application servers within a single availability domain, but in different fault domain. So that's how you're going to deploy that highly available application within single availability domain. Now that's single availability domain. Now let's look at option 2, that's multiple availability domain, but within a single region. So similar to the previous setup, you create a virtual cloud network within a region, and then you further divide that into multiple subnets. So you create one subnet for database tier in availability domain 1, second subnet for application tier in availability domain 1, and then you create appropriately third subnet for application tier in availability domain 2, fourth subnet for database tier in availability domain 2. So how are you going to set up high availability for the web tier or the load balancer tier or the database tier or the application tier? So you're going to deploy your servers where application is running into different availability domain. And on top of that, you set up the load balancer. Now, if it's a public facing load balancer, you will need two availability domain, and Oracle will automatically take care of this failover. So you provide at the time of load balancer creation, you provide two availability domain, and automatically Oracle will select which availability domain to be primary and which to be secondary. I've covered all this in one of the previous videos, k2nacademy.com/1z09321616. So that's for public load balancer. If you have a private load balancer doesn't come automatic high availability across availability domain. They are within availability domain. So what you're going to do is, as represented here, you're going to set up your private load balancer in one of the availability domain like this here, and Oracle will take care of failover automatically within this availability domain. Now you also have to create exact similar private load balancer in one additional availability domain with all the setup, and then Oracle will take care of high availability of that load balancer. And then you can configure a DNS in front of these two load balancers. So these two private load balancers, so request can go to one of these available load balancer or private load balancer. And then from load balancer, you already have high availability because your servers are running in multiple availability domains. So that's for load balancer and application server. Now, some servers or some application servers need a shared file system. So both the nodes can write to the same file system. And this is where another service from OCI comes into picture, that's file storage service. Now, related to storage service, there are different type of storage service within OCI. I cover this storage service in my training program for Oracle Cloud Architects 1Z0932 certification, where we have a dedicated module on storage service. So you have a block storage, which is used for compute. You have object storage mainly for backups, and third is file storage service. So in file storage service, it's kind of a NFS or shared file system or shared file storage, which is available on cloud that you can mount it across multiple servers. So that's high availability for your application tier and the load balancer tier. For database tier, I already covered earlier that you have option for data guard, and if you have multiple availability domains, or OCI will give you the tools to create data guard automatically from the OCI console. Or you have an option to create a 2-node rack database. Again, just a reminder that when you create this rack, Oracle creates 2 nodes of this rack within a single availability domain, but in different fault domain. So just make a note of that. So that's high availability within multiple availability domain. Now you can take this a little bit further by creating one more availability domain. So let's suppose you have these 2 availability domain in high availability. Now you have third availability domain, and in third availability domain, you configure the disaster recovery. So what you can do, you can create in third availability domain a database tier and an application tier, like the way you did earlier for 2 availability domains, and you configure the data guard from rack to the database on third availability domain. For application tier, you can configure the DR by using rsync to sync the data from your primary application node to your standby application node in the different availability domain. That's option 2. Now you have third option, which is multiple availability domain and multiple region. So whatever you have covered earlier, taking it to the next level and setting up your disaster recovery site in an additional region. Like, so let's suppose you are in US and you want to take it to the UK, or if you're in UK and you want to take your DR to Germany. So that option is also available. So you're going to set up another virtual cloud network. Now remember, I told you that virtual cloud network is specific to a region. So in this case, you're going to configure a virtual cloud network, and there's a concept called virtual cloud network peering. So there is a network peering you can do. So you have one network here, which is primary data center or one region network, and you have a second virtual cloud network here. You configure them in a VCN peering. And that kind of a peering across region of networks is called as remote VCN peering. So you configure the remote VCN peering, then you configure the data guard from one region to another region for your database tier, and you use rsync, or you can use APIs to sync the data from one region to the other region. So it's taking whatever you have done in option 2 to the next level by replicating across a region. Now, for database tier, you have another option, which is Golden Gate Cloud Service. Now, Golden Gate is for replicating the heterogeneous databases across different geographical locations. So to do a quick recap, you have 3 options of deploying a highly available application within Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Option 1, you have single availability domain, but make sure you use or take or leverage use of fault domain. Then you have option 2, which is multiple availability domain, but within a region. Make sure you take use of your public load balancers here or data guard. And then third option, multiple availability domain, but across region. So now with all this knowledge, let's look at how to deploy Oracle e-business suite on Oracle's Gen 2 Cloud OCI, including high availability and disaster recovery. So you define one virtual cloud network. Within that, you have multiple subnets. So within availability domain, you have a database tier and you have multiple application tiers. So you can configure more than one, your application tier, concurrent manager node, web node, or your forms and reports and other nodes. So database will be always in one availability domain, and the standby for that database will be on second availability domain. And for the application tiers, you have multiple application tiers for the same environment within same availability domain. So in a nutshell, your e-business suite application tier and the database tier will be hosting in one availability domain, and you can configure the disaster recovery of this eBusiness suite in second availability domain, where you configure data guard for database replication, and for application tier file system replication you use rsync. And on top of that you have load balancer, and depending on whether if you want to expose this eBusiness suite onto the internet, you deploy the public load balancer. If it's internal onto your on-premise data center, then you configure private load balancer. And public load balancer you configure across availability domain, primary and second standby. If it's a private load balancer, you configure in availability domain 1 as well as in availability domain 2, and configure DNS on top of that to go to the primary load balancer. And if that site goes down, then you send it to the secondary load balancer. So that's high availability and disaster recovery for EBS R12. So if any point is not clear here or how we are doing it, then leave a comment. So now let's go back to the question I asked at the start of this fifth part from our Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Architect Certification Training 100932. When deploying a highly available, now make a note of these important things: highly available, internet facing, two-tier web application on OCI. So which design you will pick? If you have not answered yet, then still pause this, leave a comment what you think answer might be based on the question here out of these 4 options based on what you've learned so far in this video. So let's pick option 1. So the option 1 says deploy all web servers into one availability domain. Now we know that if we deploy all web servers in one availability domain, we know that if that availability domain goes down, so my web servers will not be available. That means it's not a highly available application if deployed within single availability domain, because of losing all the web servers in that availability domain if availability domain goes down. So A is not an answer. Now let's pick it option 2, which is deploy all web servers into multiple availability domain. That looks okay or so far. And behind a public load balancer, this also looks all correct because we want a internet facing load balancer. And then deploy 2 single node OCI databases. That also looks correct because we want high availability for the database level as well. And we are saying across 2 availability domain. So this looks good so far with data guard enabled. So option 2 for now looks good to me. Then let's look at option 3, which is deploy all web servers into multiple availability domain. This looks correct, and behind a private load balancer. So if you notice here, question is internet facing, but if I put them behind private load balancer, I won't be able to configure them as an internet facing. So option 3 is wrong. Then let's look at option 4, which is deploy all web servers into one availability domain. Again, if we know that if we deploy it on one availability domain, if I lose that availability domain, my servers or my service will not be available. So option 4 is also wrong in that case. So the only selected option or the correct option in my view is deploy all web servers into multiple availability domain behind a public load balancer and deploy 2 single node OCI database system across 2 availability domain with a data guard. Let's see if I get my answer correct. So click on check and answer 2 is correct. So if you left answer 2 in the comment section, or if you guess that 2 is the right answer, then big congratulations. And if you're not, maybe worth going back to this video one more time, or this whole 5-part video series one more time. So now this is just one of the questions, and there are a lot of tricky questions like this in Oracle's Cloud Architect Certification 100932. So in each module, you have an option to learn from the videos, and at end of each module, you have quizzes. So you can practice like what to expect in the exam. And whatever you learn in that theory then part, you can then understand it better by answering these questions. So there are multiple modules for networking because networking covers roughly around 30% in the certification. So in the basic networking module, you have quizzes towards end of the module 3. So for basic networking module, you have around 15 questions. And like that, under various other networking related topics like DNS or load balancer or advanced networking, you have more questions. So you know not only you just read or understand theory, do lots of hands-on, but also then go through these exam questions so you can reinforce what you've learned in theory as well as in hands-on. So if you're interested in becoming an Oracle certified cloud architect and clear exam certification 1Z0932, and not just clear but learn it well so that you can deploy applications on Oracle Cloud, then I highly recommend you to have a look at that free masterclass, how to become Oracle certified cloud architect in 8 weeks, even if you're a beginner. We'll begin with cloud for beginners and then quickly move on to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Architect, common services, who should learn OCI and why they should learn, what this exam covers, the common mistake a lot of students make before they come to our class and how you can avoid them. Also, we'll have a look at more tricky questions like this in this free masterclass. And if you have any questions related to this program, you can also ask in this free masterclass. So all you need to do is go to this URL k20academy.com/OCI02, select the appropriate time, enter your name and email address and optionally phone number, and click on this button here. Well, that's all for deploying a highly available application including disaster recovery on Oracle's Gen 2 Cloud OCI. If you enjoyed these, then don't forget to share it with your colleagues so that you get weekly useful content related to Oracle Cloud. So go to this URL k20academy.com/subscribe, and I can't wait to see you in your inbox every Tuesday. See you next week.